Sister Elizabeth and Brother Paul. Once upon a time there were two siblings, Paul and Elizabeth. They would often fight and argue as siblings do, but deep down they knew they really cared for each other. One day their parents got into an accident while out hunting, and left Paul and Elizabeth all alone to fend for themselves. Elizabeth, being the elder sister, knew she would have to focus on taking care of her brother from then on. The two set off so that Elizabeth could find a way to make a living and support her brother. As they traveled across a wide meadow with the sun beating down their backs, Paul started to complain that he was thirsty. "Elizabeth," he whined, "I need water." Elizabeth sighed and told him they would soon find water. Just then Paul found a cow's hoof filled with water. Paul made as if to drink it before his sister cried out, "No, you'll turn into a calf." "Be patient, we will find a well soon." Paul scrunched up his nose, but followed his sister's warning. They then came upon a horse's hoof filled with water. "What about this? May I drink it?" he asked as he sniffed the water. Elizabeth rolled her eyes. "No, you'll turn into a foal if you do." As they traveled further and the heat grew stronger, Paul grumbled and whined about being thirsty. They then came upon a goat's hoof filled with water. Paul skipped over and looked at his sister expectantly. "Don't drink it unless you want to turn into a kid," Elizabeth stated. Paul blinked a couple of times, but decided he could wait no longer. "Well, I'm already a kid," he joked as he bent down to drink the water. Elizabeth looked horrified as she watched her brother turn into a baby goat. As she wailed for her brother, she met a concerned merchant who asked what was wrong. Elizabeth told him the story between sobs as the merchant tried to pat her back comfortingly, and Paul trotted around chasing butterflies. The merchant, finding himself mysteriously enchanted by Elizabeth and feeling sorry for the siblings' predicament, made a proposition. "If you marry me, my dear girl, then I will take care of you and your brother. I'll provide you with anything and everything you could need or want." Elizabeth, not seeing any other alternatives, and also finding the merchant rather cute, agreed to this proposal. Elizabeth and Paul quite enjoyed their new life with the merchant. Paul would frolic in the gardens as Elizabeth spent her time enjoying books, walks in nature, and playing with her brother. One day, while the merchant was out, Elizabeth met a young girl who asked her to come and play. "How exciting!" exclaimed the young girl when she met Elizabeth. "I've been alone in these parts for such a long time. Now I've finally found a friend to play with." The bright young girl led Elizabeth down to the river to play, but little did she know that the girl was actually a witch in disguise. Once they got to the river bank, the witch pushed Elizabeth into the river and cast a spell so that she would be stuck on the bottom of the river. Cackling, the witch took Elizabeth's clothes, disguised herself as Elizabeth, and returned to the merchant's home. The merchant did not notice any difference, and things went about as usual. Paul, however, knew his sister very well, and he could tell immediately that the witch was not her. He began to spend most of his days curled up in a leaf pile at the edge of the yard, and would hardly eat or drink. He often went down to the river bank and called out to his sister, as he could sense she was there. The witch, observing this, was afraid she would be exposed, and plotted to get rid of him. "Oh, dear husband, it pains me so much to say this, but I fear that Paul has become gravely ill. I can't bear to see him in so much pain. Please, I think we should put him out of his misery and send him off to a better place," she sobbed to the merchant. The merchant could hardly argue that, and agreed to have him killed. Paul asked to take a last drink at the river before he was killed, and the merchant took pity on him and let go. After some time, he sent his servant to fetch Paul. When the servant approached the river, he heard Paul wailing, "Oh, dear sister, where are you? Can't you swim to me? Or maybe I can come fetch you." Elizabeth's voice replied, "Dear brother, I know not where I am, only that I am tied to the bottom of this river by some curse. Try as I might, I cannot move." The servant immediately called to the merchant and let him know what he had observed. The merchant gathered some neighbors and tools, and they searched the river until Elizabeth was found. A wise elder from the village recited an incantation that was able to lift the curse. Elizabeth was pulled safely from the water, and Paul jumped and frolicked with joy. Meanwhile, the wise elder began reciting an incantation that would destroy the witch's power. "No, wait," she cried. "I'll behave from now on, I promise. Please, I'll do anything. Please don't take my power." Elizabeth chimed in. "Will you turn my brother back to his human form?" The witch nodded vigorously and turned Paul back to him. The elder agreed not to take away her powers, but instead cast a spell so that she would only be allowed to use her powers for good. After that, everyone lived happily together, and Paul and Elisabeth were able to enjoy life as they once had living with their parents.